Hello. We've been live for a few seconds, but I didn't get the normal thing that I get. So you've got me staring blankly at the screen for a couple of seconds, which, you know what, after the past week, I think I've been staring blankly at a lot of things, but that's okay. My name is Sarah Hunstead. I'm a paediatric nurse, mum of two, and founder of CPR Kids. And I'm coming to you today from Gadigal land. And I have the absolute pleasure of being joined by Alana English, who is an advanced social worker from the Queensland Paediatric Sepsis program. And today, what we're going to be talking about is not only looking after yourself as a parent or caregiver with a sick child, but also, all those things that come along with having a sick child. Like if you're still worried and you need to advocate for them, how do you go about doing this? All of those tricky questions that, when we are looking after our kids can be really, really important that often we don't know the answers to. So, Alana, I would love you to give everyone an introduction, if that's okay. Tell us about who you are and what you do.
Of course. Thanks, Sarah. Thank you firstly for having me. I really appreciate it. My name's Alana. I work for the Queensland Paediatric Sepsis program, and I also work within Queensland Children's Hospital. So I've worked there for about 13 years. So have had the privilege and the experience of working with a lot of families who've had a child in hospital for lengthy periods of time. And so, have been able to offer the support to them in that regard as well. So I also am a mum of two, and whilst I just this last weekend celebrated my daughter's 21st and my son's high school formal.
Wow.
Big weekend. Whilst they're obviously a lot older, I not surprisingly still get really worried when they're sick. Yeah. I still think what could happen and stress about what might be possible. And I certainly still remember what it was like in those early days when they were very, very little and couldn't actually speak and say things to you in terms of what was going on for them, and trying to get a sense of what was going on and trying to make sure you did the right thing by accessing the right supports and stuff. So it's great to be here today to talk about some of these things.
Thank you. I just know that we're going to learn so much, and I can almost feel the reassurance oozing out of you already, which is a good thing. It's such a thing because, we do get this. It's there. I don't think there's anybody who escapes having a sick child. I mean, of course, there are varying degrees of, that illness. And that's why as well, anybody who's watching now, we would love it if you could please tag anyone in the comments below who you think needs to hear this, amazing information, because you never know when it's going to happen. It often springs on us, at inopportune times where might have so much on with work or, at home with other children. And we need to be okay to help our kids, because it is so incredibly challenging to look after yourself when your child is sick. Mine are older too. I've got a 12-year-old and a 13-year-old, but my 12-year-old, had 5 days of, really high fevers and was really unwell, and trying to juggle that, other kids, work and so on. And, it didn't even cross my mind anything to do with me. You just go on automatic pilot and, it's all about them. But why is it so important that we do look after ourselves as well?
Well, I mean, and I fully acknowledge what you're saying. Like, I think that's what we do as parents, don't we? We sort of have this perception that when our children need us or when our children are sick, then we should put everything for ourselves to the side and just focus on looking after them. And certainly we need to prioritize them, but it's how to sort of really understand it from that perspective that when you are looking after yourself, you're actually doing that in order to look after your child. So, for as an example, I think a lot of us now have flown on a plane. And if you've been on a plane, you hear that announcement that comes over about the oxygen mask, making sure if you have a child with you, you fit the oxygen mask to yourself before you fit it to your child. And that's ultimately because if you don't, you might pass out before you get to put it on your child. And the same analogy actually applies. I think about that all the time, like if you're constantly just looking after your child, but you're not doing anything to care for yourself, you will pass out. You'll be incapable of actually doing the long haul of caring for your child because you haven't taken the time to actually care for yourself in the process. So All I think, and we've all experienced, there's been so much sickness going around. We've all had
my
this
goodness.
lengthy, years now of dealing with COVID, and now this season with all the flu that's been impacting. And it really is a marathon right now where, how do you sustain yourself to keep taking care of yourself and your children over such a lengthy period of time? So
that's right. And they tend to be, everything that I'm hearing too at the moment, of course, all the kids are bringing bugs home from school and daycare, and we're getting sick with it as well. So that's a double whammy when, you're sick as the caregiver too.
yes.
But another thing that I keep hearing as well, and certainly experiencing, with all the parents who are attending our classes and caregivers attending our classes, is that it's really tricky to even get your kid in to see a doctor at the moment. That there are lots of GPs are still not seeing kids who have got fevers, for example. But what's the most common presentation that kids have with that kind of stuff? So, there are lots of challenges. So how can we try and get around that as well?
Yeah, and I think our usual paths of what we used to do aren't actually possible at the moment. You used to be able to kind of, particularly with a young child, you'd talk to your GP and you'd be able to get an appointment, and they'd kind of prioritize young children. Which I think they still try to do, but they're just so inundated at the moment that the capacity to see people. I would suggest still, if you're particularly concerned and you have a GP that's familiar to you, calling the reception, and as you call them, rather than just trying to make an appointment, because lots of the appointments nowadays are actually online, so you'll just get a reject that there's no appointments for 2 weeks or something. So placing a call to them and explaining how young your child is and potentially what the symptoms are, because they frequently will have some key spots that are kept just for those kind of circumstances. So I would encourage you to make the additional time to make the call if you can. There's also the 13Health number, which can be helpful in terms of that online opportunity to talk through with a nurse what your child's symptoms are. And they're so great at kind of screening and understanding what you need to do in relation to this. Is it something that is a GP appointment, or is it you need to go to hospital now, or take other steps? And it was actually one of your previous CPR Kid Live that Sarah, that spoke about the Health Direct symptom checker, which I wasn't aware of before, but you've spoken about before.
Oh, this is fantastic. So Queensland obviously has 13Health, apart from Victoria, which has Nurse on Call. All the other states and territories have Health Direct, and which is a number that you can call. However, Australia-wide, there is the Health Direct symptom checker. So it's on their website, and I will pop in the comments below as well the link to this so everybody has it. And remember, while we're talking today too, if you've got any questions, please go ahead and type them in the comments below. So while we're live, obviously, if you're watching the recording of this, unfortunately, we can't answer the questions, but any questions you've got, please type them in the comments below. Back to Health Direct. So with the Health Direct symptom checker, what it is, it's online. You can actually, it starts with, the age of your child and so on, or you can go in and do this for you. It's not just for kids. And it asks you certain questions, and it's about the symptoms that your child has, and it will help direct you as to what kind of help that you need, and often any first aid or anything you can do at home. So it is such a good resource to just give you that reassurance. And, because sometimes we do need that, like, I'm not sure, do I see the GP? What do I do? It's a really good way of, it's backing you up with those decisions.
Yeah, definitely. And I think there's also, even though there's less GP appointments, there is certainly still that scheme. I know it's a little bit under review at the moment, but opportunity to access telehealth appointments. So again, even that opportunity to, if you can't get into the GP, booking a telehealth appointment, just to be able to talk that through and go, these are the things I'm concerned about. What should I do? Should I bring him or her in? Should I go to the hospital? And then I guess I would certainly recommend that if you're at the stage where you don't feel like you can get to the GP, but you're still really concerned, you can't get into them, you've exhausted every other option, take your child to the hospital. Like, in a lot of ways, I think people sometimes think, oh, I don't want to waste the time of the people in the emergency department, or they're sicker kids than my child, or I'm going to have to wait there for a long time, which all of those things are possible. But if your child's unwell and you feel uncomfortable and you don't feel that something's right, and within your gut you're like, this is just not right, then I certainly would encourage you to take them in.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's very, very important that, the current circumstance, even though, maybe geographical or timeliness that's, almost stopping us, that, we can't stop seeking help when our child is sick. It's so important.
Yeah.
So, yeah, absolutely. And you've just touched on something there as well, Alana, that, when you feel that your gut says that something is not right, sometimes you may have already been to the GP. For example, you managed to get that telehealth appointment, or, you've spoken on Health Direct, but things have changed, maybe that your child's getting worse, or you're just going, you've got that feeling. And, a lot of people, they say, trust your gut, but sometimes it's that feeling in your gut and you go, you know what, something's not right, but I don't know what that is. That you've got that feeling, and you're going and seeking help, but perhaps you have been discharged home, but things have changed. What happens if you don't feel that you're being cared for or listened to the extent that your child needs? What can we do about that?
Yeah, I think there's a few options that I would really strongly recommend you. And it's about feeling comfortable as well. I think a lot of people sometimes perceive that, well, if a doctor has said to me that my child is okay and I should just go home and rest, have them rest and have Panadol and that kind of thing, which is a very appropriate recommendation sometimes. But at the end of the day, as soon as you walk out from that surgery, you're the person who's then with your child. And from that minute on, or the next hour or 2 hours after that, your child's condition could change. And you're the person who's then assessing that from that period of time. And whilst you can seek input from experts and they can guide you and provide you with information, the only person who's the expert in your child is yourself. You and your partner potentially are the ones who know your child the best, and you're going to know exactly when your child is different from what they would normally be. And so it's so incredibly important in those circumstances to trust your gut. And it's one of the key phrases that we have as part of the Queensland Paediatric Sepsis program in supporting parents, because we want you to trust your gut. You have that parental intuition that says something's not right. My child's more unwell than they've been before, or, it might be that they're sitting down watching TV, but your child's usually the one who's running around climbing up, cupboards and all the rest. And you're going to know that that's not right for them, or they're only saying a couple of words and they're normally nonstop talking and, you can barely kind of get them to be quiet. So you're going to know that. So you need to kind of trust your gut and know that you need to speak up. So I guess that there's different circumstances. So if that's the case whereby you've seen the GP and they've said to go home and rest and you want to seek further help, you could go back to the GP, and I would strongly encourage you to still be able to speak up and go, yep, certainly follow what you said, but things are different now, and have some key points in terms of this is how things have changed. These are the different things from when I spoke to you last time. This is the difference in terms of when we came to see you an hour ago, or, it could simply be an hour ago, because things can change that quickly. We know in relation to sepsis that things change incredibly quickly. So you really need to be seeking support as quickly as you can. If you're actually in the emergency department or you're in the hospital service and you're feeling like you are not being listened to, or that you're not sure about what to say to people, again, I would trust in the fact that you as the parent are the expert, and feel free to speak to someone. So your first point of contact would be your bedside nurse, whether that's in the emergency department or a hospital ward. If you don't feel like that person listens to you, I would ask to speak to the team leader or a nurse unit manager on the ward, which you're very entitled to do. And at the end of the day, I guess it's keeping in mind, because I think hospital systems can be a bit scary for people, and because there's a lot of unknown, you don't really know the way they work, so it feels like everything's a bit, they're all the experts and I don't really know. But these people are there to help you and to help your child. So I would suggest asking to speak to the team leader or the nurse unit manager. You can ask to speak to your doctor, your child's doctor, request a meeting with that doctor. You could also ask to seek other supports within the hospital, whether that's a social worker, or if your English is not your first language, you can ask to speak to someone who can provide cultural support in terms of an interpreter. If you're of Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander, you identify with that, you could ask to speak to an Indigenous health liaison officer who could help to advocate for you. So I guess in some ways it's kind of linking with someone else, if you like, to then help you to then advocate for your child as well, if you feel a little bit uncomfortable about doing so. And then in kind of, if you've exhausted all of those options and you still don't feel that you're being listened to, you are able to use Ryan's Rule, which is a medical emergency system within the Queensland hospitals, within the Queensland health system, that entitles you to request a clinical review for your child. And that's accessible within the hospital system if you've exhausted all those other options first. And then it involves calling 13 Health while you're in the hospital and asking for a Ryan's Rule intervention. And then that activates a clinical team to come and review your child within the hospital.
Yep, absolutely. And that there is, it's not called Ryan's Rule, but there are other things implemented in different states and territories as well. So, and one of those things is speaking to, liaison officers in hospitals and so on, who can actually direct you how to do this so that you have that. It's an important thing. It shouldn't be hidden. It is something that, should be there for you to access. And I think that's an important thing. Absolutely. And, we've talked about being in hospital at the moment, and that can be something that it can just be incredibly, first word is draining and worrying and, sometimes terrifying as a parent.
Frequently.
It's overwhelming. There's a list of adjectives as long as your arm that you could use to describe it.
None of them positive, unfortunately.
No, but occasionally there might be relief, that somebody's helping you look after your child. But, yourself doesn't come into that at any stage. But, as you said before, with that analogy with the oxygen mask, how can you look after yourself when your child is in hospital as well? What are some strategies?
I think it might seem simplistic, but it's ones that we often forget, that you actually focus on the basics to start with. So eating, sleeping, exercising, which is ridiculous, doesn't it? Because, of course, you're going to eat and sleep and exercise. But when your child's in hospital for a lengthy period of time, you just don't. And you have this perception of kind of, well, no, I have to be available. And so I'll just catch little bits of sleep. But it doesn't do you any good in the long run. So I guess it's how to focus on healthy eating as much as you can and trying to access that, utilizing supports that you have, because there'll be people who'll say, oh, let me know what I can do. And it feels like kind of a throw out, let me know what I can do. And you go, oh, I'm not really sure. I would suggest that really pull on those supports and go, I'll tell you what I can do. Bring me in some home cooked meals so that I know I'm getting some, good vegetables, good carbs, a meal that's probably pretty tastier than the hospital stuff, on a daily basis. So it's going to give you some of those nutrients, drive it up to me every day, because those people might be able to help you to do that when you're stuck in the actual hospital. Consider trying to take some extra vitamins so that you can actually balance your nutrients in those other ways. Sleeping wise, trying, you revert back to the analogy of what happens when that everyone tells you when your babies are first born, sleep when your baby sleeps. I also say sleep when your sick child sleeps. As much as you can, put your head down and try and sleep. You can talk to nursing staff about putting a sign on the door of, mum and child, dad and child sleeping right now, so you don't get disturbed in those times. And that's perfectly okay to be able to take a sleep and try and catch up on the sleep you might not have got in the night before. If you can, try and alternate with another carer to be able to take a break from the hospital, so that potentially every other night or every 3 nights or whatever, you actually go home to your bed to sleep. Even though it feels, I'm sure, and I fully acknowledge, it'll be hard to leave your child, fully get that. But sometimes being able to go home and even just get 4 or 5 hours sleep will make it easier when you come back to manage the day-to-day demands. And exercise-wise, it's again, it doesn't seem like something you want to do, but we know that having that little opportunity to get a bit of fresh air, to actually step outside, breathe in the sunshine, go for a little walk, even if it's literally walk out the front door of the hospital, walk around the block and come back in. It could take you 3 minutes if you do it at a really quick pace. That's going to make you feel so much better for the rest of the day than if you'd spent that 3 minutes in the room. I promise you it will. So it's worthwhile doing that. We do have, and I think we're going to run through this a little bit, Sarah, but we've actually developed within the sepsis program a video series that's called Journeying Through Sepsis. And it is specific to families who've had a child diagnosed with sepsis. But I think a lot of the ideas in this video series are very applicable to all families who have a child in hospital for a lengthy admission. And it talks about different things that you can be doing at different points in time. And one of the mums who's on that video, it kind of resonates with that question, I guess. She talks about the fact that she's very much a gym goer. So she's always done it every day. And then her boy was in hospital for a lengthy period of time. And in her head, she was like, how do I even possibly do that? And she realized very quickly that taking herself out of the hospital for a 20-minute run up to Kangaroo Point Cliffs, up and down the stairs, I don't know how she does it, but she's a very fit person. She would manage doing that. But that 20 minutes, that just gave her, you know, the bit to kind of fill her cup again and be able to get on with the everyday. So those sort of basics, I think, are really helpful.
Yep, absolutely. And, you know, hearing all of that, it's almost, you know, like hearing the experience from other parents and what they've done to support themselves, and knowing that that allows you to care for your child better is just, it's a relief to do so. And so, you know, looking at, you know, the Children's Health Queensland website, that we do have, you do have this amazing resource of sepsis information for families. It is absolutely fantastic. I'm noticing that we're getting a lot of questions about sepsis as well. And I really want to direct, I'll bring up some of those questions soon, but I really want to direct them to the resources that we're here. So we have the family support page here and the family support network as well. You know, you've got the family experiences, you know, that, you know, all of
That's
their
where the video series is.
Yep, exactly. Right there, looking at all of this resource, which is just fantastic. So having that there as well. Other resources, you know, what is sepsis? So asking that question, could this be sepsis, which is incredibly important. And what I particularly love is the ability to have this in so many different languages. This is here for everyone. It goes through, you know, are you concerned that your child has sepsis? Could this be sepsis? Knowing the signs and having this resource there is just so important. So what I might do is that I will bring up some of the questions that we've got at the moment to go through.
Can I just mention, Sarah, also on that website, just for people to be aware of, there's a link so you can register for our family support network. So that is a network that's available Australia-wide to families. And you just click on the link and fill out your details and your child's details if your child's had sepsis. So that's both for families who have had a child diagnosed with sepsis and have survived, or for those families who are bereaved. And that provides you with access to information and resources and connection with other families as well as being provided with our regular newsletter that we send out to all our families who are registered with our network. And then we also have our peer mentor program, which is a higher level involvement, I guess, in terms of that it's a program for families in those really early stages following a diagnosis of sepsis. And they're linked with a mentor, so someone who has lived experience who can then provide that support that only someone who's potentially, you know, walked a similar path can provide in supporting you in those early stages when everything's feeling incredibly overwhelming and stressful and challenging.
Fantastic. That's absolutely brilliant. And so you can see here on the webpage, and I will be putting links to all of this down below as well, that you've got the buttons here to register. So all of that, I'll pop in the comments so that so you can access that really easily. So we'll just stick on the hospital theme for a moment before we get back to more of the clinical questions about sepsis. Lisa's actually said that her little one was in hospital for a number of weeks, but what she found hardest was that constant messaging from family and friends wanting updates. I hadn't thought about this one before, but of course, you could be inundated with that. How do you handle that?
Yeah, you absolutely are. I think we're so socially connected now, aren't we, with our phones and messaging and all of the rest. And so then it's not even people making a call, it's those quick messages coming through, but they could come through hundreds of times a day with people, how are you going? What's the update? What's been happening now? So I would strongly suggest, because we do access social media frequently, that indicating to everyone, or even nominating a friend or family member to send out a message to everyone within your contacts list, just saying, thanks so much for your support, really appreciate it. I'm going to be providing an update of whatever you choose. Once a day, once every 2 days, once every 3 days. You'll find it on my Facebook or you'll find it on my Instagram. Please go to that to get the update. I won't be able to respond to messages and questions, but really appreciate your support and thoughts. So you're kind of then getting yourself back in control of what you share, when you share it, and then you can, kind of ignore the other messages that are coming through, because I'll probably still send them a little bit, but it gives you more opportunity to just go, now's when I want to focus on that update, rather than feeling like you have to answer every person every minute of the day. And, sometimes too, you don't know what's going on. So it's really stressful to then have someone go, tell me what's going on. You're like, I'm still trying to get my head around it. And so gives you that chance to kind of really get back in control of that.
Yep, absolutely. And, Kat has said, surprisingly, hospital food isn't required to be healthy. So often, sometimes what we try to do is put calories in kids, that it's all about the calories and easy to digest on them while they're unwell. So it doesn't appear as being healthy at all. But I agree. It is such a good idea to ask for a meal from home. As someone who has had both sides of the coin, being the clinician and also being the parent in the hospital with the sick child, that was probably one of the game changers for me, is being brought in food, which was a good. Absolutely. Definitely. And what we can see here is that both Kat and also Sade have asked questions around sepsis. So when does sepsis occur? What are some of the symptoms and so on? But the good news is, Kat and Sade and anybody else who's wondering all of this, is that we have done a full Facebook Live already with Dr. Paula Lister as well. So we did that last week. So this is our part of our sepsis and looking after yourself series. And we also did one last year as well with Amanda from the Queensland sepsis team as well, Paediatric sepsis team. So I will put links to those down below as well, so you can watch those. And looking at your questions here, I think it's going to answer everything in there. Okay, so we will do that. So please have a look at those. Such a good resource. Yeah, absolutely. There's also a very quick link if you want to, because that they give so much information, answers such a range of questions. Because I think sometimes when you think about sepsis, one answer generates another question, if you like. But we've developed an animation that's also on our website that gives a very kind of brief introduction to what is sepsis, what might possibly cause it, what do you then need to do, what's the point in time when you might need to call 000 or access other services. And it's we actually co-developed it with our consumers, and it was overseen by the Refugee Council, so that we know it is appropriate for families where English is their second language as well. So go and have a look for that on our website as well. Okay, excellent. So I will pop that in the comments below too. So we will have all of this for you. It's I'm just so happy that there is so much resource to answer these questions, because, it has not always been there, but it is. No, there has not. We've been working very hard, but and there's always more. There's always more to develop, isn't there? So, it is really exciting how much more we've got available to families now. Absolutely. Now, Lisa has also, that's the wrong question. I see that Lisa's asked a second question as well. That her little girl's been sick. She's taken the doctors and said have Panadol, but she doesn't seem to be getting any better. I think we've kind of answered Lisa's question already in the fact that, it's about, you can go back to your GP. You can go back and actually, rather than can, you should go back. And I hate the word should, but it's sometimes it's really encouraging and going, what, you can do this. Please go and speak to your GP again. And if you're not getting any joy there, you can get a second opinion. Call 13Health. There's using go back and watch the part where Alana has been talking about what you can do in these circumstances. And please go back and watch that, and because there is a lot that you can do. Yeah, I think we often think about the, should go back, because we get caught up in that I shouldn't bother professionals. I shouldn't bother experts. If the expert has told me that things are okay, whereas, you're the expert. And if you feel like something's not right, then absolutely go with your gut instinct and take further action. Yeah. And, you've got the two people here in the health field who are saying, go and do this. We want you to do this. So please. Absolutely. Yeah. And Holly has asked a question here it's going off a bit on what we're talking about, but what I'm wondering is whether, I think this is actually a question we get a lot, and I'm wondering if we can direct Holly and other parents and carers who are wondering the same thing to some resources for this. And if not, I'm sure we can look and, pop in the comments later. But Holly has asked, what practices exist to support a child having a blood test? So sometimes it's all different types of tests that the children have phobias to or are really worried about. And it can be, one of those things where in the hospital system we've got, play therapists or child life therapists and so on to help. But, what's out there in the community at the moment that that parents and carers can use to help, their child through this?
Yeah, because it's really challenging, isn't it, when you then have that requirement to have to do that. So you do have to take them for the tests. But as a parent, then you feel awful that you're putting your child through this procedure that then causes such stress for them. I want to make a comment first, I guess, that at the fact that at 8 years of age, it's not surprising that that's potentially becoming worse, because that's the age where they do really start to develop that understanding that's beyond just what mum and dad says is a good idea. And her independently is going, no, why am I doing this? This is distressing and scary and challenging. So I think the first part is actually, and I'm sure you're probably doing this already, but just for reinforcing these ideas, having conversations and talking with her about those situations prior to getting into the situation. So having a bit of a practice in terms of what might we do, what can you control when you do get to this situation, what might be something you can take with you that might help. Yes, acknowledging it's going to be scary, it's going to be distressing, but how do we get through it? What do we do to take with us? How do we prepare? What do we do afterwards? What's a nice thing we can do after the fact, after we've had that test? Not minimizing in any ways that it's going to be distressing or scary, but actually really acknowledging and sitting with that it is going to be. And there are a few different books around that in terms of, taking your child to hospital, different kind of children's story books that I can look them up for you and send them through to you that you can add into the chat at a later point if you like, Sarah. But having those opportunities, again, away from the time when you're about to go into the actual hospital setting, but you're reading it at night time and you can talk through, here's another little girl who was finding it challenging, found a test scary. What did she do? What were things she thought about? How did she prepare herself? What happy place did she go to? There's a whole lot in terms of meditating on a different area, different focus when you're in that moment to then help you to get through those particular procedures. So I feel like there's a lot to do before to prepare you for the in the moment, and then focusing on what do you do afterwards in terms of rewarding, acknowledging that they got through that and how brave they were and all of those things as well.
Exactly.
I appreciate it's very general, but in terms of thinking about those ideas.
No, I think that's great. And medical play is so important as well. Being able to, go through and, explain what's going to happen and letting them, pretend to do a blood test on a teddy bear, even though at 8, I think that's still a really important thing.
Oh, absolutely.
Medical play. And another thing that can be really helpful, particularly, is ringing up or going into the pathology collection centre and saying, can we just come in? Can we come and see what it looks like? We're not going to do it today. Because sometimes it's the unknown that can be the scariest part. That if it is the known, and you know your child best, sometimes for some kids, they just create this big narrative that and when they actually get there, they go, oh, is that it? Okay. And they may have, she may have had a bad experience in the past as well, which makes things hard. But, it may be worth going and visiting, but that medical play to take out that unknown can be so important.
Even discussing with them, is there a certain time of day we can come when we know we can walk in and go straight into the room?
Yeah.
Because that waiting in the waiting room sometimes can make things even harder, can't it? So kind of having those conversations ahead and, you walk in, go straight in, procedure happens, you're done. It's all over. Yeah,
exactly. And Kate, who's watching, has said that there are some fantastic resources, again, from Children's Health Queensland about supporting children if they're nervous about needles. Fantastic. So the link is there. Please click on that and have a look. And you know what? We at CPR Kids will also do a post on this as well, using providing that resource too. So I think this is something that everybody needs to know about.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think still being able to, I think we sometimes kind of go, oh, how do we make sure they're not worried? How do we make sure they're not scared? Needles are scary.
Yeah.
Tests are scary. It's actually okay to be able to go, of course they're scary. I feel a bit scared too. And this is what we can control. You know, we can't control whether you get the needle or not because you have to have these tests. But what we can control in this situation is this and this and this, whilst knowing you're going to feel scared and you're going to feel upset. And that's okay.
Yeah, no, that's right. Oh my goodness, this has been such a good talk. I feel like I know it has, hasn't it? It has absolutely flown by because we've got so much to talk about, and also the fact that there are so many excellent resources out there, which once again I will be putting in the comments below. And what I'm looking forward to next as well is we have another session on July the 7th. Alana, do you want to tell a little bit about that?
Yeah, so we have a lovely mum, Jo, who's coming to speak with us, whose daughter actually contracted flu and then sepsis a number of years ago. And while she's older, you know, Jo can certainly speak to the experience, like we've talked about today, that anyone with a child who's sick is certainly struggles with that and the challenges that you have. So it's going to be wonderful to hear Jo's story in terms of what that's been like for her and her suggestions and ideas in terms of what how you can advocate for your child and how you can access things within the hospital system, what might be helpful. And she's going to share a little bit with us in terms of how her daughter's doing today as well, and which will be great. Yeah.
Fantastic. I'm really looking forward to that. So we'll be putting that on our events page. It's CPR Kids, so keep an eye out for that. Make sure that you check the interested box, because then you will then be able to get all of the notifications and reminders about that too. And we will be broadcasting that on YouTube as well as Facebook. And remember, you can watch this at any time. Please share it with everyone, because the more people who know this life-saving and, you know, and brain-saving information, and you know what I mean, like what this can do for parents who are caring for sick children, and just remembering to look after yourself can be a complete game changer. So thank you so much for joining us today, Alana. You are a wealth of information and expertise. So thank you very much. Okay. See you later, everyone.
Okay, bye.